Devin Pike with the Dallas International Film Festival. Two of the documentaries on this year's slate deal with cowboy and rodeo culture in a way that probably don't think of when you're thinking of rodeos in the Wild West, and especially here in North Texas, where rodeo culture is so deeply ingrained between the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo and the Mesquite Championship Rodeo. We spoke with the directors of Cowboys of Color yesterday. Today, we get Matt Livadary, the director of Queens and Cowboys, a year on the rodeo circuit. First off, Matt, thanks for bringing this documentary to Texas.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Talk a little bit about where you decided to actually focus on gay rodeo cowboys, because it's a subculture of the rodeo circuit that I don't think people even pay attention to, but there's a deep history in that culture.
It's true, and I knew nothing about it. It all started from a love for rodeo. My dad took me to my first rodeo when I was 3 years old in Cody, Wyoming, and to a kid from Los Angeles, it was just eye-opening. And so 25 years later, I was working in development at a production company in Hollywood trying to find a TV show idea to make. And all I knew is what I wanted to do was in rodeo. So without knowing a whole lot about rodeo, I decided to go on a research trip all across North America, interviewing everyone I could at regional rodeos, traditional rodeos, PRCA rodeos. And along that trip, I learned about gay rodeo. And when I heard about it, a light bulb just went on in my head. I knew exactly why there was the need for a distinction, for one. And I left my job and decided to film a documentary instead of a scripted TV show. And 3.5 years later, I'm sitting right here.
3.5 years? That's not a bad development cycle for a documentary like
I've
this.
heard I got off easy. And believe me, I bitched about it the whole time through. It's been 2 years. I can't believe I'm not done yet. But yeah.
When you start a documentary, though, you're looking at it going, I'll shoot a couple dozen people, slap it together, and post will be fine.
That's exactly how it goes. And then you're so deep into it, you can't quit even if you want to, because you're just so far into it. And you've got 800 hours of footage by the end of it, and have to make sense of it.
And you don't want to disappoint any of the people you've already
Exactly.
talked to.
Exactly.
Was there any reticence in any of your subjects? And we're going to bounce around on this, but was there any reticence on going on camera talking about the culture?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm really proud to be in Texas, particularly to screen the movie, because at my second rodeo, I was in Alvarado, Texas, filming a hoedown, and it was after one of the rodeos, and a man came up to me terrified that I had a camera. And he said, "Please don't film me. I don't want to be filmed. I'm not out in my community. If anyone and I'm a teacher, and if my school board finds out, I'll immediately lose my job, get disowned by my family, and it will ruin my life." He said, "Gay rodeo is the only place I can go to be myself. So please do not film me." And that was the first moment of many stories like that, actually, where I really saw the importance, and I felt the weight of responsibility to honor that story. And so I'm so happy to be back in Texas with this film, and I hope it gets back to him and his community.
When you're looking at homophobia in the 21st century, and this is a wide-arcing question, so you can feel free to sock me in the jaw if you want, but you've got two different polar opposites. You've got more and more states that are accepting of same-sex couples, and on the other hand, you've got people on the conservative end who are pushing back, and it just seems like the conservative aspect of it would be a rodeo staple, because you look at that as the classic Americana with Roy Rogers and John Ford films. How much of a dichotomy is that when you're in the gay rodeo community, looking at it, saying, what side do you actually fall on?
Well, it's amazing that times have become so much more accepting, and it's amazing, and it's even happened in only the last 10 years, where, I mean, it's almost popular and trendy and gay media. I mean, there's a gay character on every popular television show, so it seems like it's almost been totally accepted. But along my travels, I found that there are definitely still two Americas, and people who have not quite caught up to the times, and it's amazing to see that the views still exist. They're just a lot quieter and a lot harder to get talked about outspokenly. So it was difficult to get people to talk on camera about their views, but in the film we show a sort of a wide array of the different forms of homophobia that there are, and they're a lot more subtle than you'd expect. They're not, it's not, being outed from a restaurant or getting beat up necessarily, but it's simply just rejection or silence. So I think it's subtle, but it definitely still exists, and we still have a long way to go.
And rodeo in itself is dangerous. I mean, people really don't understand that maimings and death happens on any rodeo day. It's always a possibility. So, does that heighten the sense of danger and excitement in the same realm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like people going to NASCAR to watch the wrecks almost. And rodeo, every single time you're getting on the back of an animal, you're putting your life at risk. And there's so many variables that can go wrong. And, there's never anything that you can really plan for except just to be a completely poised and skilled athlete. So people work really hard to rodeo, and a lot of people on the IGRA circuit really, they'll have day jobs, but they'll have to practice and train on their own, and it's just they're following their passion, and it's a complete adrenaline rush that they're following. And one of the things I admire so much is that in rodeo there's no salary, so you really only win money, and really not that much money, frankly, if you win first place. Otherwise, you don't really go home with much. So that to me speaks volumes to the passion that's inherent to the sport that really doesn't exist in a whole lot of sports aside from rodeo, in my opinion.
Is there a sponsorship community that is working with the IGRA? Because you see it on the and I'm getting the alphabet soup wrong, but the same groups that work with the Mesquite Championship Rodeo and so forth, where you'll see riders who are sponsored, and they'll travel the circuit. Is there a sponsorship network in place for?
Not a network per se. Every rider can try to get their own sponsorship. Rodeo is an amazingly expensive sport. With all of the hauling, you have to haul your horse across 4 states, and gas prices being what they are, it's a really expensive sport even before the entry fees start. So it's a very difficult time. So finding sponsorship is really difficult, but the better and more skilled competitors typically do have sponsorship. And then the actual rodeo, which I think is so amazing about the IGRA, is completely volunteer run. And it's a hugely unique organization in that regard, and they are raising $70,000 to $100,000 every rodeo to hold it on, and there's 15 to 18 rodeos a year, and I can't even imagine having to do that. Most people don't even make $50,000 to $80,000 a year on their own, and then having to raise that for another organization is pretty incredible to me.
What was the one thing that surprised you as you were in production for the film where you would never have expected this?
It's really naive to say, but I was so shocked at how many gays there are in the rural West. And I guess my own prejudice or biases when I first started, and I didn't think I had anything to learn, I felt I was very liberal coming into it, was just the wide array and the robust LGBT community that exists, who've grown up in ranch lifestyle with the country West, who bleed for the cowboy lifestyle. And that was something that was really interesting to me, and something that I don't think is portrayed very often in popular media. And so I really set out to tell a story that can, be an honest portrayal of people really living their lives the way they want to out in the country.
There are a few, not many, but there are a few documentaries of rodeo circuits and specific riders and so forth. Did you look at some of these other documentaries and say, if that shot presents itself, I got to do it? Or did you stay away from saying you wanted to be a specific film that's unique to your own vision?
I definitely wanted a unique film that wasn't a Western. It wasn't like any other documentaries that had been made in rodeo. And I actually spent a lot of time watching other sort of sports documentaries like Murder Ball, and even non-sports documentaries like King of Kong, which I'm a huge fan of, to construct a story that was a narrative story that's not, I don't particularly love educational content that's just feeding you information and beating you over the head with what you need to know and how you need to feel, and homophobia is bad. And I shy away from that. I try to tell it within the story and within a character. So we spent a long time constructing a story that is a narrative story all the way through. There's an arc, there's people with passions and following what they want. And so that was something that I really wanted to do, and I think it's really made a difference in why it's playing to mainstream audiences now.
As you're shooting, you obviously talk to dozens of people as you cross the country for this. Was there one person who you spoke to where you had wrapped, you'd gone on to the next city, I've got to go back and talk to this person?
Oh, that happened, I think, 25 times with 25 different people. And that's what made it so hard. By the end of the day, we had 800 hours of footage to make into a 90-minute movie. And 800 hours, I'm terrible at math, but it's, over a month straight of just to watch it. And so when you sort of fall in love with all of these stories, and everyone has such compelling stories, and there are so many people on the cutting room floor, it's hard to pick one. Honestly, we always joke about the fact that we could have a mini series out of our uncut footage. But yeah, every single person just had a story that you just fell for them. Just the perseverance and the courage and the bravery they had to live authentically in a town that maybe didn't accept them was just something that was hugely eye-opening to me.
I love asking this question. I hate asking this question. But once the festival run ends for Queens and Cowboys, where can people see this film after it finishes its festival run?
Sure. So the next few months, as you said, we're going to be in festivals all over North America and internationally. We are still very independent, and so we don't have a distribution deal yet, but we're in talks right now. And we're hoping that Gay Games is happening this year in Akron, Ohio, and in August. So we're hoping that by that point we have a distribution deal in place and can be in theaters and on Netflix and basically everywhere you'd find any of your other documentaries. So.
Fantastic. You can keep up with Queens and Cowboys at dallasfilm.org, where we keep tabs on all of our alumni films. Is there a website for Queens and Cowboys as well?
Yes, www.queensandcowboys.com, and if you want to learn more about the Gay Rodeo, it's www.igra.com.
It is a fantastic documentary. It's heartwarming, and it's an amazing amount of fun as well. Thank you for bringing this to the festival, man. It's a gas to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.